Soulstorm is 2.9D. Now, I'm sure a cynical person will say, that's another marketing term. It's the same as 2.5D. So I'd just love to hear from you guys, first of all, just to hear like what 2.9D means to you, and if it means something more than just an interesting way of describing the game.
I'll start that, Benny.
Yeah, please.
So one of the things that people really were asking and liked about the classic games was that it was taking place on a more traditional side-scrolling format, and or I'd say platform side-scrolling format. And the challenge with that, and this is what we were trying to conquer in the original Abe's Odyssey, was how do we get more depth in the world so that the art and the beauty alone can create the sort of what I would call the Z pull into the world. And I see something in the distance, like in Abe's Odyssey, it was Paramonia or Scrabania, and I'd see a temple off in the distance, but I could only get there, moving to the right, right, or moving down. And so it was a trickery to achieve that, but because characters were always, once they were on the screen, they were maintaining the same scale. And the challenge that we wanted to conquer was getting more of a cinematic feel walk through the world where the character could be at a wide range of different scales on the screen and located in specific places on the screen, the way you would shoot a movie as a cameraman, as a cinematographer. You'd say, okay, right now the distance is more important. What he's coming upon is more important, and that threat is big, and our character's vulnerability is very small. So we want the camera and the composition to reflect that, and we really wanted to be able to have tight controls of that. However, that meant going in 3D. But the audience was like, we want to keep the 2.5D gameplay. And so that was a challenge. So we had to build everything on a system of rail-like capabilities of movement, so we could watch the world in 3D. And then when we got into more classic gameplay, we could just balance it out so that you were able to use the controls in a way that you would have in the classic format, except you're moving through in a more cinematographic way that made the world, gave the world more of an impression. And we wanted to use the resolution of the new hardware capabilities, not just in the res of the characters themselves, but to be able to get the character to be smaller at times in the world that you're controlling in real time. And that goes to the vulnerability that we wanted to feel with Abe against a very threatening environment. On that, I'll pass it over to you, Benny.
Yeah, and so thank you for that. And I'll say, as a previous TD, when Lorne pitched the idea of 2.9D to me, it was kind of terrifying, right? It breaks some of the cardinal rules that most of us know. Games is around building smoke and mirrors, right? You only render a small portion of whatever the experience is, and everything that's outside of that, you try not to render it because the hardware is only so fast, right? You're not going to be able to install a new CPU and make it go faster or more memory, those kind of things. And so 2.9D was, kind of an epic technical challenge in pulling that off, because you're showing everything. You're showing the whole world. And the development effort around that was tremendous. I mean, it was on a scale of beyond just building the game. It was like building two games, because you had to account for all of the real estate that you were rendering. But I think the most important thing for the audience out there is, as a director, and I'll use a couple of terms that we use in the industry often and try to explain them. If you're not pushing the envelope, if you're not going beyond what was done before and evolving the products that you're building to cut through, when there's 1,000 games plus coming out a day, right, on different platforms, you really have to have a hook, something unique that gets partners and the community excited, something different, right? And the moment Lorne had pitched 2.9D and we had our first few prototypes of it, I wish we could show some early footage. It immediately resonated. Like, I was like, I don't know how we get there, right? I don't know how we render all that stuff. And so there's going to have to be a massive engineering effort, but man, it cuts through and it separates Soulstorm from previous IP in a good way, right? Because it just enhances the storytelling. And, so it was a huge success for me. And for all of our partners, when they first saw it as well, their first reaction was like, wow, look at everything that's there, and you can see the whole world. This isn't new and tasty. This isn't previous IP legacy. This is something new and different, but it still feels familiar. And that 2.9D delivered for me, in spades.